Hello student. Today we are understand about the carbohydrates. So for your syllabus, the carbohydrates include the classification of the carbohydrates, structure and properties of monosaccharides, oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. So this part isomerism, that is structural and stereoisomerism. So this unit or subunit is deleted for examination. So here first we go with the introduction of the carbohydrate. So you have know there are different biomolecules. For example, carbohydrate, protein, nucleic acid and lipid. So for all this carbohydrate, all these four biomolecules are for your syllabus, but today we are discuss about the carbohydrate. So the carbohydrate is a sugar in plant or it is a glycogen in animal, as well as the starch cellulose is also the form of the carbohydrate, which is the main component of the food. That means generally we have used a daily use this carbohydrate as a food purpose. So these carbohydrates are present in grain, tuber, roots and fruits in the plant, as well as in animal. It is also present in the form of milk, egg and meat. So this carbohydrate is actually it is hydrates of the carbon, hydrates of the carbon. But this is an old definition. The carbohydrate contain the carbon, hydrogen and oxygen in the ratio of 1:2, 2:1. So here this carbohydrates is the main source of the energy. That means we have always used the carbohydrate as an energy source. And there is a two basic component in the carbohydrate is the aldose and ketones. So this is a new definition, that is carbohydrates are defined as a substance giving polyhydroxyaldehyde or ketones or compound produce them on hydrolysis. So this is the new definition of the carbohydrate. So this carbohydrate contain the carbonyl group, particularly aldehyde or ketone, and at least two hydroxyl group. So here this is a nothing but the introduction of the carbohydrate. So I think you all know what is meant by carbohydrate. So the carbohydrate is nothing but it is a energy source and it contain carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Next point, that is the classification. So there are so many carbohydrates are there, and their nature is also different. Therefore there is a classification of the carbohydrate is essential to understand. So this carbohydrate is classified on the basis of number of the sugar molecule in that. So on the basis of this criteria, the carbohydrates are classified as the first one, that is the monosaccharide, and then polysaccharide, then next one, that is oligosaccharide. So here this is the first group of the, that is the monosaccharide, number of sugar molecules. So in monosaccharide there is a name indicates that there is a single molecule of the sugar is present here. In polysaccharide, so there is many units of the sugars or monomers are found in polysaccharide. And in oligosaccharide, oligo means few number, that is a few sugars or the sugar molecules are found in oligosaccharide. So this is the first three group. Then this first group is again classified into, suppose here first we think about the monosaccharide. So the monosaccharide is again divided into two according to functional group. So in that the first one is aldolase, second one is ketones. So this is according to the functional group. This monosaccharide is again classified on the basis of how much carbon atom are present. So number of the carbon in the polysaccharide. So in that first one, that is triose, trioses, tetroses, pentoses and hexoses. So here there is a 5 groups according to number of the carbon atom present in that monosaccharide. So here this is the classification of the monosaccharide. So on the basis of functional group there is two, one aldolase and ketose, and according to number of carbon there is a diases, trioses, tetroses, pentoses and hexoses. So here there is a 5 groups are there. So this is the classification of the monosaccharide. Then this oligosaccharide is nothing but there is a few means 2 to 10 sugar molecules are found in the oligosaccharide. And this oligosaccharide is again classified as a disaccharide, trisaccharide, tetrasaccharide and pentasaccharide. So here there is a respective examples are there. In disaccharide there is sucrose, you all know. Trisaccharide there is raffinose. In tetrasaccharide there is stachinose, and in pentasaccharide there is a ribosome. So this is the example and the classification of the oligosaccharide. Then third one is a polysaccharide. So the polysaccharide, the name indicates there is a many number of the glucose unit or sugar units are present, and it may be same or different sugars are there. So on the basis of this, the polysaccharide is again classified as a two group. The first group contain the same sugar unit and another group contain the different sugar unit. So in that, the first one we will discuss about the polysaccharide which have the same sugar unit. That means there is a only single type of the sugar molecules are there. So they are designated as a homopolysaccharide. So homo means similar, polysaccharide. So there is so many monomers of the sugar units are there, but these sugar units are of single type or same. Therefore, it is called as a homopolysaccharide. And in homopolysaccharide, the well-known example is starch. You all know the cellulose, inulin, glycogen, chitin and dextrin. So this is the example of the homopolysaccharide. Then there are some polysaccharide, they have different sugar unit. So in that they are called as heteropolysaccharide. So the heteropolysaccharide is nothing but there is a different sugar molecules are there. For example, here agar, agarose, heparin, keratin, keratin sulfate. So here this is the example of the heteropolysaccharide. That means here this is the briefly we have described here the classification of the carbohydrate. So again we have repeat that summarize the carbohydrate. There is main 3 groups are there: monosaccharide, oligosaccharide and polysaccharide. So these groups are on the basis of number of sugar molecule present in them. And monosaccharide is again classified as according to functional group and according to number of the carbon atom. So according to functional, there is 2 groups are there, aldolase and ketose. And in according to number of the carbon, there is 5 groups, that is dioses, trioses, tetroses, pentoses and hexose. Dioses means there is 2 carbon atom. Trioses means there is 3 carbon. Tetrose means there is 4. Pentose means 5. And hexose means there is 6 carbon atom is there. So here this is the monosaccharide. In oligosaccharide, oligo means there is a few sugar molecules are there. Few means there is 2 to 10 sugar molecules are there. Then it is called as a oligosaccharide. So there is a disaccharide, there is a trisaccharide, tetra, pentasaccharides are there. So here there is 4 groups in oligosaccharide. And in polysaccharide, there is 2 groups are there, homopolysaccharide and heteropolysaccharide. The polysaccharide is homopolysaccharide is they have the same sugar unit, and the heteropolysaccharide they have the different sugar unit. So I think you have understand the classification of the carbohydrate. The next point we have discussed here briefly the monosaccharide. So the name indicates that there is only one single unit of the sugar is there, therefore it is called as a monosaccharide. So in monosaccharide, this monosaccharide is first determined by scientist Emil Fischer in 1980, and if you discuss about the properties of the monosaccharide, they cannot be hydrolyzed into simple sugar. That means suppose if you take any monosaccharide and we have to try to hydrolyze, then it cannot further hydrolyze. So this is the main property of the monosaccharide. So they are simple sugar. Monosaccharide means simple sugar, sweet in taste, and it is a colorless crystal soluble in water, and they are represented by the formula that is a CnH2OL. They are either aldolase or ketose in form, and this monosaccharide are nothing but the structural and functional unit of the oligosaccharide and polysaccharide. That means oligo and polysaccharide is formed by monosaccharide. Monosaccharides, for example, glucose, which is a main monosaccharide which supply the energy to the tissue of the plant and the animal. So this is the reaction which shows there is no hydrolysis. That means suppose we take the glucose and hydrolyze with the water, then there is no reaction is further. That means the glucose is cannot convert into any other molecule. So this is the main property of the monosaccharide. And this monosaccharide is again classified on the basis of the number of carbon atom. So already we have diages, triages. So diages, the example is glycoaldehyde. Triages, the example is glyceraldehyde and dihydroxyetone. Then tetroses, that is erythrose and erythrol. Pentose is nothing but the ribose and ribulose. Hexose, there is glucose, galactose and fructose. So this is the example of the this group of the monosaccharide. That means you have to remember the monosaccharide examples are glycoaldehyde, ribose, ribulose, glyceraldehyde, dihydroxyacetone, glucose, galactose, fructose, erythrose. So this is the example of the monosaccharide. Then this monosaccharide, there is one example for your study, that is in pentose. So the pentose is one group of the monosaccharide. So here in that monosaccharide, the example is called as a ribose or ribulose, and the molecular formula, structural formula, that is C5H10O5. They are either aldo ribose or aldopentose or ketopentose. That is, there is two examples, that is ribose or ribulose. So this ribose, you have know, the ribose is important constituent of the DNA and RNA. That means the ribose is found in nucleic acid, and ribulose is an important component in photosynthesis. So here this is the structure of the ribose. So here how many carbons are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbons are there. That is pentose, and there is a what is a well-known example of the pentose. Then next one, that is the hexose. So here hexose, there is we have discussed about the one example, that is glucose. They are physiological and biologically important component, and it contains 6 carbon. That is if you studied about the formula, that is C6H12 and O6, and it may be aldohexase, for example glucose, galactose and mannose is the, and there is a glucose and fructose are occur freely in plant and fruit. You have know galactose is a component of the lactose, which is a disaccharide present in milk. That means here the lactose and galactose, which is a form of the disaccharide which is present in milk. The glucose, this is structure of the glucose. Here there is a 6 carbon containing compound is there, and this glucose acts as a main energy source to the cell. So here this is we call it as a monosaccharide. Second one, that is oligosaccharide. So already we have know oligo means few, saccharide means sugar. So there is a few sugars are there. That means there is 2 to 10 monosaccharides molecule when combined, then they are called as a oligosaccharide, and this oligosaccharide can be we have hydrolyzed. So in oligosaccharide, all the monosaccharides are linked by beta glycosidic bond. So this is also one more important, that is there is a beta glycosidic bond is there, and they are also colorless and sweet in taste. They are soluble in water, and the formula is given, that is CnH2O(N). They contain a symmetrical carbon atom, hence they are active compound is there, and oligosaccharide present in cell wall of the plant as well as nitrogen fixing bacteria serve as a cell adhesion. That means the oligosaccharides play important role in nitrogen fixing bacteria. So here the oligosaccharide is again classified. So there is also grouping. The oligosaccharide, there is the first one, that is a disaccharide. That means there is a 2 sugar molecules are there. So in that there is glucose and fructose. That means here sucrose is hydrolyzed. When we have take the example of the sucrose, and if the sucrose is hydrolyzed, then it gives the glucose and fructose. So therefore it is called as a disaccharide. Di means there is two types of the sugars are there, glucose and fructose. So this is called as a disaccharide, and the example is a sucrose. There is a trisaccharide, the example is raffinose. So in trisaccharide there is a raffinose, and the raffinose when hydrolyzed, then it we will get the glucose, fructose and galactose. So three sugars are there, glucose, fructose and galactose. Therefore we call it as a trisaccharide. Then there is a tetrasaccharide. This is a third type of the oligosaccharide, and the well-known example is the stachinose. So in stachinose, when hydrolyze the stachinose, then we will get four different we call it as a sugars are there, glucose, fructose, galactose and galactose. So here there is a different sugars are there, and there is a 4 in number, therefore it is called as a tetrasaccharide, and the example is a stachinose example. And last one, that is a pentasaccharide, and in pentasaccharide there is 5 different sugar molecules are there. So galactose, 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 glucose and fructose. So here this is the hydrolyzing when the Verbasco hydrolyzed, then we will get this is the different 5 number of the sugar, and therefore it is called as a pentasaccharide. So here this is the classification of the oligosaccharide and some example of the oligosaccharide. Then example of the oligosaccharide. So here we have take the example of the sucrose. So the sucrose is a disaccharide, and it is commonly called as a cane sugar, or we call it as a table sugar. So when we have hydrolyzed it, then we will get the glucose and fructose, and therefore it is called as a disaccharide. So you have to remember the sucrose is always disaccharide, and it is a common sugar and widely distributed in photosynthetic plant. It is a sweeter than lactose, maltose and glucose. So here this is the cane sugar. You have know the cane sugar or the table sugar is a very sweet. Then it is colorless, odorless, crystalline, solid, soluble in water and insoluble in ether. So here this is one more property of the sucrose, and the melting point is 180 to 186 degrees Celsius, and this sucrose is hydrolyzed by enzyme maltase and invertase. Sucrose is used as food. It is present in fruit, jellies and other food product, and when it is formed when glucose and fructose are linked together at carbonyl group. It is found in greatest abundance in certain plants such as sugarcane, beet, carrot and some sweet fruit. So this is the reaction of the hydrolysis of the sucrose by enzyme invertase. That means it gives the glucose and fructose in it. So here this is example of the oligosaccharide. Next one, that is the polysaccharide. So the poly means many. So this is the third group. We earlier discussed the monosaccharide, then disaccharide, then polysaccharide. So the polysaccharide is nothing but many sugar units are there. They form a chain, that is the polysaccharide. That means many saccharide molecules are there. So they are polymer of the monosaccharide. They are made up of 10 to many thousands of the monosaccharide monomers are present in polysaccharide. That means it is called as a macromolecule. They are colorless, amorphous, solid and no sweet taste. So this is the main difference between the other polysaccharide and polysaccharide. So other saccharides are sweet, but here there is no sweetness in polysaccharide. Insoluble in cold water, but it is soluble in hot water. The two most common plant saccharides are starch and cellulose. You all know the starch and the cellulose is the main component of the plant, and they act as a polysaccharide. So this polysaccharide is very much long chain. It may be linear, that is straight, or it may be unbranched or branched. They dissolve in hot water or boiling water. There is again two types we have already discussed, that is homopolysaccharide and heteropolysaccharide. So homopolysaccharide gives only one type of monosaccharide on hydrolysis, for example starch, cellulose, glycogen, inulin and pectin. If you take the example of the cellulose of starch and hydrolyze, then we will get only glucose. There is only glucose there. So here after hydrolysis, and there is heteropolysaccharide, it gives more than one type of monosaccharide hydrolysis, for example heparin and murein. So this is the polysaccharide, and here this is the homopolysaccharide. The homopolysaccharide gives only one type of monosaccharide on hydrolysis, for example already discussed starch, cellulose, inulin, glucose, glycogen is animal storage and the starch is in that is a plant storage. Heteropolysaccharide, the example are agar, agarose, heparin, creatine sulfate, and this heteropolysaccharide gives more than one type of monosaccharide on hydrolysis. So here this is the polysaccharide, and in that polysaccharide we have discussed about the starch, which is an example for your syllabus. The starch, here this is the structure of the starch. So the starch, there is a many glucose molecules are joined with each other and they form a starch. So this is a starch is a very complex structure. The starch is nothing but it is formed due to the condensation of the amylase and amylopectin, and it is abundantly found in seed, fruit and tuber of the plant. It is a homopolysaccharide, that means when we have hydrolyzed, then we will get only glucose as a single saccharide. It is amorphous, it is tasteless and soft substance. It is insoluble in cold water, alcohol and ether, but it is soluble in hot water. It gives a dextrin during incomplete hydrolysis. Dextrin is used as a adhesive. It is made up of two structurally different homosaccharide units, that is amylose and amylopectin. Two units are there. One is amylose, another is a amylopectin. So amylose, which are present in starch, it have 20% starch. It is soluble in water. It is long unbranched state chain. It gives maltose due to union of enzyme amylase. It gives intense blue color with iodine. That means we detect with help of we test the amylase with the help of the iodine. Then amylopectin. The amylopectin is nothing but it is majority part of the starch is amylopectin. That means 80% in starch there is a amylopectin. It is insoluble in water. It is a homopolysaccharide with high molecular weight, and it is branched chain polysaccharide in starch. So here I think you have get the carbohydrate. Then finally we discuss about the significance of the carbohydrate. So you know the carbohydrate is the energy source of the living organisms. Starch is a storage of the carbohydrate in plant. Glycogen is a storage of the carbohydrate in animal. That means in plant the carbohydrates are in the form of the starch and cellulose, while in animal the carbohydrates are stored in the form of the glycogen. As well as in animal, the lactose is a milk sugar to provide nutrition to young baby. As well as they regulate the fat metabolism in animal. They play key role in metabolism of amino acid and fatty acid. And you all know the sugar is a cane sugar, and there are so many important for the cane sugar. Some heteropolysaccharide, for example heparin, function as an enzyme, as a cofactor. That means this heparin acts as a cofactor for enzyme. So here this is significance of the carbohydrate, and here this is also acts as a supporting tissue in plant and the animal. So I think you have got what is meant by carbohydrate, how they classify, and briefly we describe the monosaccharide, oligosaccharide and polysaccharide with example.